Welcome to Dudes on Movies, a podcast where dudes talk about movies. I'm your dude, Scott.
I'm your dude, Dave.
And today we're discussing 1998's Gods and Monsters, directed by Bill Condon and starring Ian McKellen and Brendan Fraser. But before we do that, we've got to promote something, Dave.
Right.
Dudes on Demand is back.
Yes.
January, folks. Get your requests in.
Right. Dudes on Demand, everybody. It's our thing that we do where we ask you to program an entire month of the show. Send us your requests for episodes on movies you'd like to hear us talk about. We'll have the polls will be open from now until probably through the end of December, I would imagine.
Yeah. And you can go to dudesonmovies.com/demand, and there's a form there you can fill out, or just send us a message on social media, come to our front door and knock on it and tell us,
exactly.
if you know where we live.
Right. And tell the whole world.
Yeah. That's kind of scary, Dave.
Yes.
But if you do that, we might do your movie.
I mean, we'd have really no choice, I guess, if you showed up.
Yeah, so there's 5 slots open.
Just don't kill us.
So we've got to dwindle it down to 5. So
yes.
Put them all in, and we'll choose.
Just reach out to us in any way possible.
Yeah. We're super excited.
Yes.
We love doing this. It's always really fun. And one more thing we want to ask is, if you guys are out there and you like the show, why don't you give us some reviews on Apple Podcasts?
Right.
We've been back for a little bit now. It's been cool. We've got a lot of new listeners, so if you guys would give us some love, we'd really appreciate it.
Yes. If you give us a review on Apple Podcasts, it will really help the show grow. That's the place where podcasts really take off. And if you can get yourself on the front page of Apple Podcasts because you have a lot of reviews, then it really helps people find the show, and it'll really help us out, and we'll be able to do more stuff for you too.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. And I know Spotify, you can rate shows. Mm-hmm. You can't write a review, but anywhere you are, rate it.
Yes. If you get us on some podcatcher that's not Spotify or Apple, obviously, just give us a review there too, or rate us, whatever.
Yep. You could also print out an image of our podcast and send it to your grandma in the mail, and she can download us then. Dude,
you're hitting me right where I like to be hit. It's just like that. That is I'm I'm always I'm just in love and enamored of dead technology and things we don't do anymore.
We can fax it to people, man.
I if we have a pneumatic tube system, I'm all about it.
That would be sweet.
Oh my God, yes.
Wow, we really derailed this, but we love you guys, so
yes.
Please consider everything we've said and get your movies in.
Right.
We're ready to do them. All right, so now it's time to talk about what we've been watching, Dave. What have you been watching?
I watched Casino.
Boom.
Yes, they were screening it at Alamo Drafthouse here in St. Louis, and my wife and I went to see it on a Friday night, and it was great fun to revisit, one of Martin Scorsese's, tales about crime.
Yeah.
I know that on social media, there's a lot of children who are mad at him. What they've always talked about is that he only does, mob movies. And we all know that's not true. He's done 4 movies out of 30 that are about the mafia.
Right.
But this one is, and it's a great one, and it's definitely worth your time.
There we go.
Exactly.
Okay. I watched How to Blow Up a Pipeline. I don't know if you've heard of this film.
No. How?
It's based on a book. It's about a group of young Americans that set out to blow up an oil pipeline, and it follows them as they build a bomb, and it leads up to the event.
Okay.
You get flashbacks of each person's background and kind of why they're doing this and stuff. Everyone's been kind of fucked by the system in their own way, and now they're trying to get back. It goes into things like what's the difference between terrorism and revolution and stuff like that.
Right.
It gets into some of this philosophical stuff. It's actually really thrilling in parts, and it's kind of like, oh my God, you're actually building a bomb and I'm watching you do it, and it's dangerous, and all these lengths you're going through. You're obviously going to be on the FBI wanted list after you do this.
Yes, of course.
So, I mean, the movie takes a very bold stance, actually, and says that this is right to do at the end.
Okay.
I would have thought they'd leave it ambiguous, but no, the filmmaker is no, fucking blow up the system.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something.
I mean, that's a brave stance.
Yeah. So it's a great watch, whether you believe that stance or not.
Right.
It's quite thrilling.
Jeez, cool.
Yeah. So now let's talk about Gods and Monsters, Dave. Why don't you give everyone a synopsis?
Yes. So rather than a straight biographical story, this movie is a fictionalized account of the last days of filmmaker James Whale. It's based on Christopher Bram's novel Father of Frankenstein, and it focuses on Whale's relationship with a young man who symbolizes a lot of his personal and creative past. It also features an excellent cast and is highly personal to its filmmakers, Bill Condon and Clive Barker, and we're going to break it down for you. Clive Barker executive produced it. Bill Condon described it as Clive Barker has some parallels with James Whale in that he's involved in horror, and he's also an English expatriate who was a gay man. And I was like, I never thought that Clive Barker and James Whale would be
right,
kind of have a parallel life, but I guess they kind of do.
I guess I can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, Pinhead and Frankenstein, right?
Yes, exactly right.
They're all-time great monsters.
They
right?
are. I mean, they're definitely iconic for one reason or another. And he has a special interest in this stuff, and it's easy to see why.
Yeah. So the movie kicks off with Brendan Fraser. He's getting ready in his beat-down trailer, right?
Yeah.
And he gets in his old crappy truck and he drives to this, nice mansion, you could say. Not a huge mansion, but it's a very nice estate.
Yeah, it's a real nice house in Pacific Palisades. Today it would probably cost, millions of dollars.
Oh, millions and millions, definitely. It has a great pool.
It just sure does. Yeah, it's a really nice place. And I saw this movie when it first came out, and because I was a young single man at the time, Brendan Fraser, he plays Clay. His Airstream trailer that you mentioned, it's parked right next to the beach, and it looked so luxurious to me.
Yeah.
When he gets up, he immediately lights a cigarette while he's still in bed. Like when he finally gets going for the morning, the first thing he does on his way to his truck is he punches a speed bag that's hanging outside. Yeah. And I mean, a part of me still feels that this looks like luxury. I mean, a very small part of me.
There's something idyllic about it.
It is.
He's just on his own, doing his thing.
Right.
Living by the beach, yeah.
Forget what I said about a small part of me. A pretty big part of me thinks this looks pretty good,
Yeah, and when you look like him too, he's
God, he's
pulling left and right, and man,
just. This was a time. I mean, this was the '90s when Brendan Fraser was he was a commodity because of his looks.
Oh yeah.
People looked past his acting ability, I think, a lot of times because of just he was so good looking.
Yeah.
It's weird too because his personality in real life obviously belies a lot of the characters he played on screen. I mean, he's a big tough guy who no one wants to mess with, but in real life, he's really sensitive and vulnerable.
He's very soft-spoken. Yeah, he's not like those characters.
He's a really good actor, as it turns out, because he was able to play people that were just totally unlike himself.
And I think he gets more remembered for the Mummy franchise and stuff like that, which is fine, but that's the way it goes, right? Yes. Someone gets a huge franchise movie that's a giant global hit, and that's all people remember them for now. That's kind of like James Whale here, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah. Actually, you're right. You're right.
Wow.
Yes. Like something that is just one very small part of who they are. It's all anybody thinks about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude. So this is James Whale's house, by the way, people.
Right.
He's the new gardener. He has to mow the lawn and tend the bushes and everything.
Right. Clay works as a gardener, and this is taking place in 1957.
Yeah.
And James Whale, played by the great Ian McKellen. This was the first thing I ever saw Ian McKellen in. I wasn't familiar with him until this movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was very unschooled actually when I saw this movie entirely. I mean, I knew of Boris Karloff in Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein stuff. Yeah. I knew about that stuff. I didn't know about James Whale. Mm-hmm. And so this was actually my first exposure to even any kind of mention of him as a person.
Right.
Was this movie. And so this was exactly who I thought this man was, completely.
Now I know the story is fictional, right?
Yeah.
But the James Whale in the film, I imagine, was pretty much like that, right?
Yes.
That's how he was.
Yes. They know what happened to him, in the end, and they know how he died. He left a suicide note. He had a stroke about a few months before his last days. And he did have this companion, David Lewis, who lived with him, who also worked in film. And everything we see in the movie is pretty comparable to how he really lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Clayton Boone fictional, though?
Clayton
Brendan Fraser?
Yeah, Clay is completely fictional.
Okay.
According to Christopher Bram.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we meet Ian McKellen. He's in his house, and he's getting ready for an interview that's set up with it's some guy. Mr. K is his name, right?
Yeah.
But is he like a student reporter or something?
I think he's like probably just a guy who writes for like the UCLA paper or something.
Yeah. Right. So he comes over to interview him. And all he wants to do is talk about the Universal monsters. All he wants to do is talk about Frankenstein. That's all he wants to do. He is fanboying out on him when he gets here.
He is, and he's doing it in that really kind of insulting way, where it's just like he's fawning over him too much, and he's also like
he's just quoting the movie and then being like, remember that?
I know, exactly,
that was in your movie, remember?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's insufferable.
He really is.
Yeah.
He really is. At one point, he says, how long before we get to the horror movies?
Yeah.
Man.
Right. Because Whale is trying to tell him, about his past, his upbringing in England. They were very impoverished, and his family didn't treat him well, especially his father.
Right.
And he's going into all this, and Mr. K's just like not having it.
I know.
He wants to talk about Frankenstein. That's it.
It's just like, this little shitbird, he's granted an interview with James Whale,
Yes.
And he pulls this crap. And like you said, when James is talking about his upbringing, his start in the English theater, it's really fascinating stuff. And you, as an adult who likes hearing interesting stories, you want more of it.
Right.
But all this guy cares about are the most surface level details of the Universal monster movies.
Right. Yeah.
And look, what comes next? I know that James proposing the quid pro quo to Mr. K is seriously problematic stuff.
Yes.
It's a wealthy man demanding essentially like sexual gratification from someone with no power. But because Mr. K was being such an impatient little turd about everything, I feel less sympathy for him than I probably should.
I do too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a really entertaining scene also.
It is. It's a great scene. Jack Plotnick plays Edmund K, by the way. I had to give him some credit because he's actually really great in this.
Oh, he's really
the
good
character's
in this.
Intolerable, but it's a great performance.
Exactly.
So yeah, he says, I'll answer your questions, but every question you have to take off an article of clothing. He makes him do strip interview,
Strip interview, man. It's like,
and he abides.
The guy goes for it, and at one point he's lighting a cigar. Obviously, there's a lot of symbolism with the cigar,
right?
And he's saying that at one point he delivers this line about it's time for him to answer the question, and he got the cigar in his mouth. He goes, "Take off your shirt, and I'll tell you all about it." With the cigar in his mouth.
Yeah, it's a great because the camera even cuts to an angle that we haven't seen yet in this scene.
Yeah,
so it's like completely out of place shot that is just emphasizing this one line of dialogue. Right. I highlighted it here in my notes, Dave.
Nice.
Because when he says like, "Hey, let's play strip" or whatever, Mr. K says, "So the rumors are true that you were forced to retire because of a homosexual scandal."
Right.
Or because of a scandal or something like that.
Because of a sexual scandal.
A sexual scandal. And then Whale goes, "You mean homosexual scandal?"
Right.
Yeah. And that's when he says, "Take off your shirt and I'll tell you all about it." Which is so fucking predatory.
It is.
Like,
completely.
I think, okay, that's my one problem with Whale, though, is he does have a lot of predatory characteristics with Mr. K and with, Brendan Fraser's character, Clay.
Yes.
I can let it slide a little bit because I don't know why I can let it slide. Maybe because I like Whale a lot in this, and I like the performance.
I know.
And I know his motivations. He's a lonely guy.
Right.
He's confused. He's going through sickness. The end of his life is coming.
True.
And he's lonely and has no one to share anything with.
That's true.
And he's letting these base instincts kind of take over and push him towards those things, even though it might be the wrong way to go about it.
Boy, well, you brought up there about being lonely and not having an outlet, for his, what he's feeling. I mean, like, it's weird because for the last 23 years, I've lived very far away from my family, and far away from where I grew up, and but I'm still in the same country, in the same hemisphere, so I can go to where my family is, and I can be where my people, come from and stuff.
Yeah.
James Whale now lives in sunny California, surrounded by comfort and convenience, which is about as different from turn-of-the-century West Midlands of England as you can get.
Yeah.
It's extreme culture shock, and even though I've seen this movie quite a few times, this was the first time I thought seriously about that aspect of his life. So it's interesting that you had the same thought.
Yeah.
He's so far from home and all alone.
Yeah.
Because, like, Southern California versus, like, where he came from. I mean, like, it's a
so different
planet.
And in 1957, it might as well be another planet.
I know. Right.
Trying to call home, write a letter will take you 2 weeks.
I know.
You know?
That's exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, he is so isolated, and like even like David, the companion he had with him, he's gone. Like he left to pursue the more career opportunities and stuff like that. Right. Even though I guess they are in touch, kind of, but not really.
Yeah, they're kind of like on again, off.
Yeah,
again
like they
now.
might see each other, which they do later in the film. But yeah, it sounds like it's nothing. They haven't fully committed to each other. They're just kind of like,
he lived there for a long time.
He did. But did they break up? Was that what happened?
See, that's the thing. It's like we don't know like if they ever officially broke up.
Right.
But David was working in New York on other projects, and so like they'd go a long time without seeing each other, and especially after James's stroke. Then like David fully moved out. He didn't live there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's it's a weird thing where it was just kind of like he had half a companion essentially.
Right. Yeah. So the loneliness is just compounded by this stuff.
Yes.
And everyone he's surrounded with, it's all fake. It's all gallantry, Hollywood bullshit.
I know. Right.
And so that's when he starts talking to Clay, he like finally has another outlet.
Right.
It's like therapy for him.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and he first approaches Clay, like when Clay is gardening. He's mowing the lawn.
It's like the next day or two or something. Yeah.
And he asks him, like, it's kind of important for like later in the film. He goes, your tattoo. Can you? It says death before dishonor. What does it mean? And Clay says, oh, well, that just means I was in the Marines. And he goes, the Marines. Yes, of course. He goes, I take it you were in Korea. And Clay does a very strange expression. He just shrugs his shoulders. I don't know. If someone asks you, were you in the war, and you shrug your shoulders, that can mean so many things.
Yeah.
And, James Whale doesn't like pursue it any further.
I didn't know what to think when I saw him do that. I was like, okay, what does that mean?
Right.
Like, do you just not want to talk about it?
Yeah.
What happened?
Right. Right.
Yeah. And James Whale is coming on real strong here, too. He's like, hey, when you're done, you can hop in the pool if you want. No one uses it anymore, really. But, it's hot. You cool off. I got another job to do after this, so no thanks, creeper. Like, no, I'm not getting in your pool. I do appreciate the whole aspect of Brendan Fraser from the get-go has been kind of suspect of what James Whale's motivations are.
Yes.
Like, even from the get-go, he senses something.
Okay, so you think that he's like, that Clay always knows that James is like after him physically?
Maybe not like for the first thing here, but like he senses something's off.
Right.
And this guy he's being a little too friendly to me.
Okay.
I don't know. He wants to be my friend. Maybe not get in my pants, but he wants to be my friend.
Right.
Yeah.
It's weird because like as the movie goes on, I start to feel less and less that like I know that he wouldn't deny being physically intimate with Clay. But I think that it actually does get deeper for him, like you said.
It evolves.
Exactly. It's the outlet that he needed because like we mentioned his stroke. The whole point of like the whole point of the movie really is the after effects of his stroke.
Yeah.
And what it can do to someone, to any person who suffers a debilitating brain injury like this. What like everyday life is for you after that happens. I mean, like, you cease to be able to just perform everyday functions. Like things that are normal in your everyday life, you can't do them anymore. And if you're a creative person and you have so many interests, to not be able to do any of that anymore. It's devastating.
Right. Yeah. Definitely is. Especially someone like him who's had success in the past and now he can't have it anymore.
And to be successful in Hollywood, especially around that time, I mean, like, in truly like the golden age of Hollywood, I mean, he was on top.
Yeah.
And now even though he's well off and he has comfort and everything, he's living in obscurity somewhat. He can't even like engage in what he had filled his time with for the last 20 years after he left Hollywood, which was painting.
Yeah.
One thing James Whale, like, one of his great pastimes was he would repaint known masterpieces, and I mean, I've seen some of the stuff. They're in the movie, like some of his paintings.
Those are actually paintings that James Whale did?
Those were Whales.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. There was that the still life. Like Brendan, when Clay comes into his studio, he's like, looks at it and goes, well, I know this painting. And he's like, well, the reason you know it is because
it's famous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And and he would just recreate this stuff. It was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when he invited him for tea. This is like the next day, right?
Yes.
And they're sitting there having tea. And he tells him, well, no, I'm not famous for painting them, but I'm famous for making movies. And
right.
He gets out of him eventually. Like, he made Frankenstein and stuff like that. So he goes, oh, you made all the Frankenstein movies? And he says, no, only the first two. The rest were done by hacks.
Right.
That's great.
That is awesome. And we should say that, like, the ending of the thing with Mr. K, after he gets down to his boxer shorts, that's when things go awry, because James starts talking about something and he can't finish his thought. He drops his cigar, and the after effects of the stroke are taking hold,
right?
Because what happens to his, anytime he gets talking about something or starts thinking too hard, his mind wanders all over the place,
right?
And he can't come back to what he's supposed to be talking about,
right?
And that's where we meet Hannah, played by Lynn Redgrave. Yeah, his awesome Hungarian maid.
Yeah.
She comes running to the pool house with his pills.
Yep.
And she sees Mr. K there in his undies, and she is not having it.
Yeah. She like isn't shocked that it's like that,
right?
But she's not happy, right? She's like, not again. Is her expression
exactly?
Like, oh, come on, not again, Jimmy.
I know.
Yeah.
She says to him something like, "You've been out of the hospital for 2 weeks and you're already chasing after boys."
Yeah.
And it's he told the guy to go home, but like. I mean, and she's right. She's totally right.
Yeah.
He is doing this. I mean, he's guilty of it.
He is. He's guilty of it. One thing I'm glad, though, the movie doesn't shy away from, like, an elderly person still having a sex drive.
I know,
and
exactly.
Still not afraid of it.
Right.
And even if nothing comes of this, he's still having a fun, flirtatious time with this,
Yes.
You
don't see that. You're right.
Yeah, the movies don't do that very often.
No. Anytime that they've ever like shown senior citizens with a healthy sex life, it's always played for laughs.
Yeah.
This is more or less like, oh no, this guy he still wants to do stuff.
Right.
Not only is he elderly, but he's like sick, and like his mind is going, and he's still after trying to do stuff.
Oh man. And sadly, that's when he tends to like lose his mind more, is when he's pursuing these kinds of thoughts.
Yes.
Or remembering the romances of his past and
right.
things like that. That it makes his mind even go further, which is real tragic, really.
It is.
That's what happens when he relives these great memories or is trying to pursue some new ones.
Right. Oh man, I know. Yeah. And the whole thing, the arrangement he makes with Clay when he invites him in for the iced tea. is essentially that, like, because Clay looks around and sees all the paintings, and James says, "Listen, you have." He says he has the most architectural skull.
Yes, you have the most marvelous head.
Yes.
And he also says architectural skull. Like,
Right.
like, what is this? What? It's quite funny when he says that, actually,
I know.
because it's not what you expect him to say. You kind of expect him to do some kind of pickup line,
Right.
But not that.
I mean,
like,
that's serious stuff. If somebody
Yeah.
told me I had an architectural skull and that they would pay for the privilege of drawing it, I'd be like, well, I'm intrigued.
Yes.
I mean, you really think this highly of me?
Yep. Yep.
And he also, it was a favorite touch of mine. This happened in Witness. Remember when Harrison Ford takes the glass of lemonade from Kelly McGillis and he downs it in one gulp?
Oh, yeah.
That happens in this movie.
It does, man.
Brendan Fraser takes the iced tea, and Ian McKellen can barely contain his arousal.
Oh my God. I know, dude. Like, he just chugs that thing.
It's awesome.
And you see every gulp in detail.
Exactly. All the sinews of his muscular neck.
Because he has his shirt off, right?
Yes. I think he's just in his undershirt at this point.
Oh,
Because,
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, he's still clothed
Right.
at this point.
Right.
But yeah. Oh, man. And Brendan Fraser's like, well, there's a painting of a nude man.
Yes.
Like, prominently in frame.
Right.
Like, you can't, it's there on purpose,
It's
right?
half the shot.
Yeah, it's half the frame. And he's like, well, you're not going to draw me in my birthday suit, are you?
It's a legit question.
Yeah, it's true. But
Yeah. And do you remember James Whale's response?
no, I don't think so.
I assure you, I have no interest in your body, Mr. Boone.
Oh.
Bullshit.
Oh.
I mean, holy crap, dude. And I found, I think, I know that that's an actual James Whale painting. I think it's a self-portrait.
Really?
Yeah.
Like from the mirror? Like looking in a mirror?
I guess he must have painted it while looking in the mirror.
That's talent right
It is.
there.
Yeah, the guy,
The paintings are great.
Exactly, because it wasn't all just copies of Monet's. He also did original stuff like that,
Yeah.
and it's it's really well done.
Man, I wish I could draw or paint like that. Like I can't even get close to that.
I dabbled in drawing, and I can draw, but I can only do copies.
Okay.
If you asked me to draw your kitchen, it just wouldn't come out right.
Okay.
But if someone else drew it, I could copy their drawing.
Really?
But that's as far as my talent goes.
So you could copy that self-portrait of James Whale.
Yes.
Dong and all.
Yes, exactly. I could draw quite a dong.
Yes. Hard pricks.
Yes, hard, arrogant pricks. He mentions.
There's some good lines later in the movie. Yeah. But yeah, so he agrees to get drawn. He's going to be paid for it too. So
because he could use the money. I mean, who couldn't?
Yeah, yeah. So he comes over to get drawn, and Hannah's mad because she knows he's just trying to have sex with boys again.
Yes. But she's also just it's 1957 and she's from
Exactly.
the old world. I mean, this is not, she doesn't understand that kind of
Exactly.
decadence. But
Yeah.
when she brings him down to the pool house, it's James Whale's studio, she says to something about he looks plenty big.
Yeah.
Whoa. Jeez.
He chooses his words very carefully in this film.
Right. Oh my God.
Oh, it's
he
so
looks
funny.
plenty big.
He looks plenty big. Yeah. So, he asks him to take off his shirt because it's not right. Like the collar's not right. It's gonna mess him up
Right.
during the drawing.
And the light is probably going to be all wrong because it's a white button-up shirt.
Yeah, right. So he's got some logic there,
Yeah.
but it's all bullshit.
Yeah,
really.
he wants to see this guy with his shirt off.
He's like, "Ooh, I got a good excuse. The lighting."
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
So he takes it off and he's very uncomfortable about it,
Right.
And James Whale just keeps teasing him about his girlish shyness and stuff.
It's great. I mean,
But I'm like, dude, he doesn't need to take his shirt off. Does he
doesn't.
really?
No.
He doesn't.
imagine just in any scenario where whether someone's painting your picture or not, if they just ask you to take your shirt off, it's
On our next podcast, Dave, be prepared. Shirtless,
and yeah,
better audio quality, And they start talking
Yep.
because as soon as he starts drawing, he just starts blabbing about his life.
Yes.
You know, like this is why I called it therapy for him.
Right.
Because as he's drawing the portrait, which we don't see the portraits while he's doing it.
Nope.
You know, we don't see anything. It's just them talking. And sometimes there's really cool shots of like a real close up of Ian McKellen's face, like in the foreground,
Yes.
and then like a focused, distant shot of Brendan Fraser in the background. Like it's really cool.
It reminded me of Citizen Kane.
Yeah, it's very Citizen Kane.
You know, and it's I don't know why more filmmakers don't use this kind of deep focus photography when you're in a 2-shot.
Yeah.
Because you're right, it jumps out at you like. You notice it really prominently, you know,
and I think it really expresses the intimacy of the scene.
Absolutely.
Like you were so close to his face, and Brendan Fraser's muscly naked chest is right there next to it.
Right.
You know, it's in the distance, but in the frame, it's right next to it. You
Yes,
know? It's like
exactly.
his face is on his body.
It's very expressive. You're
Yeah.
right. I mean, there's no. It's not subtle what they're getting at here, and that's what makes it great is that they're using like that format of the really, because like Ian McKellen's head is bigger in the shot than Brendan Fraser's full body,
Right.
You know, so it's almost like you're looking at a big talking statue next to a smaller statue in the background.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's really well
It's a
composed.
great shot, dude.
Yes.
But yeah, he's talking about his past. He says something about how he has phantom smells, right?
Right.
And he starts smelling drippings. So he says, yeah, all the poor people ate drippings in England, you know.
Right.
And Brendan Fraser's like, did you eat drippings? And it kind of pisses him off because how dare you suggest I was poor, right?
Yes.
And then he admits, he's like, yes, we ate drippings all the time, you know.
Understanding class at the time he was growing up. I mean, like in Victorian times, I mean, like, yeah, it's like if you were poor, that's it. You're poor.
Right.
And that's all you'll ever be. And if anyone ever, like, you know, if you ever thought that you could like rise above this, someone was there to tell you you can't.
Yeah. And he says that person to him was his father.
Yes.
Because he didn't fit in with anyone there. He had imagination and joy, which wasn't allowed, you know, where we were.
Wow.
They took him out of school when he was 14 to put him in a factory.
Yep.
You know, because that's his place, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, it's awful. And he resents his father for this.
Right. And it's weird because like when he rejects his father, he kind of rejects his whole family. I mean, like we see in other flashbacks how he had a mother and siblings, and you know, for him to end up where he was, I mean, I know that he had to leave all that behind just to go out in the world.
Right.
But like he has cut himself off entirely from all of that because it's just not part of who he is anymore.
Right.
And like at one point his mother, I think his mother understands Jimmy better than his father does, because when she tells him to go clean the privy, he gets up and he says, "Quite so, Mum," to the privy, and he kind of like does this little affectation.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Who are you to put on airs, boy?" And then she looks down at his drawings and sees, "Oh my God, this kid actually is real. What a great artist he is."
Right.
And she's never like encountered anybody with talent in her family.
Exactly.
And you know, so yeah, I'm glad to see that he at least had a little bit of love from his parents that way.
Right, yeah. And I think breaking away probably was best for him, you
Yes.
know? Like, I think that's something more people should do in their lives. Like, if you're being held down by something, let go of it. It's hard to do.
I know it is. It is.
But if you really want to fly, you know,
Right.
you got to do it.
And you don't owe anyone your life. You know, and like you said, it's really hard to do because like you're always thinking about what it's going to be like for the other person, the other people, like when you're not a part of it. But you know, ultimately they will be better off too if they're not holding you back and your life can take the direction it needs to go.
Yeah. So this all comes out of him
Right.
while he's drawing, and he's getting really emotional about it.
Yeah.
And even saying like, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I don't know.
Right.
I just am.
I've never heard dialogue that's this accurate in terms of like portraying rambling.
Yeah.
You know, like someone just starting to tell a story that's not really going anywhere, but there's still a lot of like value hidden in there in places where I would sit and listen to James Whale tell me his life story. Of course I would. You know, he's lived a really fascinating, you know, Yeah, obviously.
You're not going to chime in and say, "Can we talk about the monsters now?"
My God, I just, man, you know what,
Mr. K?
Mr. K, man, I would have chucked his ass in the pool,
undies and all, man.
right?
So that's the end of this scene, really, and
Yes.
Clay had brought in like a TV guide saying, "Hey, they're going to show your movie on tonight,"
Right,
and stuff
right.
like that. So like later after this, we see. I love this scene. He's at the bar. His regular bar he goes to all the time, and he has a relationship with the waitress that's kind of an on again, off again, hate you, love you kind of
Yes,
thing.
it's Lolita Davidovich
Yes,
Betty.
it is.
Yes,
Yep. Yeah, and she's really good.
right.
He tells the guy who owns the bar, like, "Hey, turn the movie on. We're gonna watch the damn movie, right?"
Right.
And there's like 5 or 6 people there. And they turn on Bride of Frankenstein. They all start watching it. And, like, everyone's saying how corny it is and stuff, but Clay doesn't think that at all. He thinks everyone else is an idiot, too. Like, no, this is great. What are you talking about? It's not corny.
Right. Yeah, it's weird because, like, Betty and the other guys at the bar are, like, the 1950s version of, like, ironic hipsters.
Yeah.
And even though something like Bride of Frankenstein should be exactly what they're all about, if they actually have this identity, but they can't see past what's aged about the movie. And they have a shitty attitude about it.
Yeah.
Clay, like you said, he kind of sees the humor in it, and he's also moved by the overall poetry of the movie. Mm-hmm. Like, he's actually getting exactly kind of what James Whale was going for.
Right.
And then we flash over to James Whale's place, and turns out he's watching the movie also with Hannah.
Yep.
And it's funny because Hannah's reacting to it in like the most basic way imaginable. Like, she's scared of it.
It's not my teacup.
Exactly. And she certainly doesn't find it funny.
I'm sorry, JB. Your movie is not my teacup.
Your movie is not my teacup. That's a great line. And then James, of course, he knows exactly what he was after, and he made the film, and he knows every frame of it. So he's just like enjoying his wit.
Yep.
And he's able to sit there decades later and like revel in all the in jokes and craftsmanship.
Yep. And they have a flashback here too of him actually producing the movie.
Man, even though the scene of them shooting Bride of Frankenstein is only about 5 minutes long, it's a real set piece.
Yeah.
Because you're so familiar with the original movie, and here we are seeing those sets and actors and costumes in color.
Yep.
I'm a total sucker for behind the scenes Hollywood stuff, as I know you are as well. So this is right where you want to be. And I love to see James at his like professional and creative peak as well. Mm-hmm. He's at his best in this moment. Because it's 1935 and he's on top of the world.
Yeah. He's making the sequel to like the #1 movie.
Yes. Right.
Which many say is superior to that one even.
Exactly.
You get to see this historical moment go down when the bride finally awakens and looks around the room.
It's so cool.
You see it from like a long crane shot, like a far away shot.
Yes.
And you're like, wow, that's what it looked like standing there. But that's not what it looks like on the screen, man.
I know.
It looks marvelous on the screen.
Right.
But it's really cool to see them actually producing it.
And, he's so locked in when he takes he's got his cigarette holder and he's dressed in like the finest clothes. He's dressed amazingly throughout this whole movie. Well, it's tailored,
He even has tailored pajamas, find out.
Can you imagine tailored pajamas? I mean, it's just like, what kind of lifestyle? It's just incredible. But like, when he calls action, he's so like just intently watching them.
Gosh,
I mean, it's so cool.
Like, and right before the flashback, we hear the line, "The monster is lonely, he wants a friend."
Yeah.
And I mean, that's James Whale, right?
I mean, yes, of course. And I mean, and it's Clay. The parallels between Clay and the monster it's probably the most obvious symbolism.
They even show it straight up at parts of the movie. Well, they also swap roles, though, too.
I know.
Like, he plays Dr. Frankenstein at one point,
Yes.
and Ian McKellen is the monster on the table.
It's like, and I like that they do that because, if it was just about, if the only parallel was, a big hulking dude is Frankenstein's monster, and it's like, well, that's not really any kind of symbolism.
Right.
I mean,
we're just gonna make him look like Frankenstein.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, look at this guy with a square head. You know?
No, but like right after this, there's a dream sequence, right?
Yeah.
And James Whale is the monster. He's on the slab. He's dead.
Right.
And Brendan Fraser is playing Dr. Frankenstein, and he cuts open his head and puts in a new brain, which is obviously a metaphor for their relationship and how he's helping James Whale through having these conversations and sitting for him for his art.
Yes.
And so, like, this was James Whale's dream, right?
And, like, it's so cool to see, like, Brendan Fraser, obviously, like kind of going around this set. He looks like he's having a great time playing Colin Clive, essentially. Mm-hmm. He's doing all the almost like those old time movie mannerisms, and he's looking at the Tesla coil, and then like there's a thunderclap, and he looks up at it really.
There's the sparks,
exactly. Yes, it's really fun, really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's good. I love these kind of sequences they throw in, like the homages. I think I read somewhere that some people don't like them.
Oh, really?
Like they didn't really like them.
Well, I don't know what their reasoning was. I mean, did they give a reason why they?
I guess I don't know. Maybe they thought they were like Oscar bait stuff.
Oh, really?
I don't freaking know. But whoever said they were dumb sucks.
Yes, I know, because they're really entertaining, and they're not even that long. I mean, it's like that one that we just talked about.
And they have meaning to them.
Exactly.
They're not just there for no reason.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, and they were actually very funny too. I mean, to watch, like,
yeah,
I love watching Brendan Fraser.
They're a little tongue in cheek.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When he cuts, he just actually like literally cuts Ian McKellen's head open. There's no blood or anything, but he takes out the brain and looks at it and weighs it, and like
it's just like a Nerf ball he pulls out. You know, that's all it is.
It's really, it's like deliberately.
It's a fake brain.
Exactly. This is not. Yeah, man. If you can't enjoy this, I don't know what you're watching.
I don't know. So the next day, Brendan Fraser comes back over for another drawing session.
Yeah.
And this time he's in the kitchen, and he's waiting in the kitchen with Hannah.
Yeah, because he's been invited to lunch.
Yeah.
He was actually out. He was just cutting the hedges, and James comes out, or Hannah comes out and says, the master would like you to join him for lunch.
I love it how she calls him the master.
I know.
Like, that's definitely like a little elbow for the old monster movies too, right?
Of course, because he even he refers to her as comic maid at one point. Because he's it's great.
Okay, yeah. So he comes in for lunch and he's hanging out, and Hannah's like getting upset about it because she knows he's going to go to hell. Because I'm assuming she's a Christian of some kind.
She's a Catholic, yeah.
She's a hardcore Catholic, man. I grew up in the family like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's going to die and go to hell, and there's nothing we can do about it, and she's so sad.
And she just, oh God, and she's trying to make Clay understand what she's talking about, even though she suspects him of this activity as well.
Yeah.
And then she finally just comes out with it. She goes, "What is the good English? All I know is bugger. He's a buggerer. Men who bugger each other."
Oh my God.
And Clayton is sitting there with his iced tea, looking at her like, "What are you saying, lady?" And,
yes.
And finally he gets it. Okay. Yeah. It's and his friends at the bar had teased him earlier because he had come in there apparently like telling everybody, "Hey, this guy wants to paint my picture."
Yeah.
And he's a film director, and we're going to watch his movie. His name's James Whale. And when the movie had started, he like pointed at the screen, "See, I told you, James Whale. I know this guy."
Yeah.
And they had like told him essentially that like, this guy's some old pervert, and he's all he cares about is your looks, and
they're not wrong.
I mean, they're kind of right. I mean, yes,
but there's more to it
exactly,
than that.
Yes, they're oversimplifying.
They're teasing him.
Yes. But he now knows the truth about Jimmy. So he has some thoughts about it. It's 1957, and he goes in to have lunch with James, and James is opening his mail, and one of the things is an invitation to Princess Margaret's garden party
at George Cukor's house.
At George Cukor's place. It's a pretty hot ticket.
Yeah, dude. So at this point, he asked Brendan Fraser, like, "Hey, do you want to sit for me now? I can draw you now. I'll pay you for, the long work and for your time extra." And he's like, "No, I don't really feel like sitting still today."
Yeah.
And I think he's just kind of uncomfortable with the whole situation because I think the real thing is the dishonesty that's been on display from James Whale.
Right.
He seems, it's like a weird balancing act that Clay has here. Like, he's a little put off by the homosexuality.
Yes.
but he's also not against it.
Right.
Like it's like, I'm not gay, but you are, and I don't care. That's fine.
Right.
But don't keep trying to get in my pants because I don't want to.
Yeah, he has a surprisingly progressive attitude about it in this moment.
This moment, there's a moment later where he gets kind of a little more aggressive about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And he eventually just does, like, kind of confront him about it. He asks him, so have you ever been married, Mr. Whale?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, but I had a companion who lived here. My friend David lived here for years. And he says, does this surprise you? Because I think James Whale understands that, like, Clay knows something.
Yeah.
So he just decides to come out with it, and he's kind of like, not playing with him, but he's like, wants to hear him ask the question.
Right.
So finally he just says, does this surprise you about my companion? And Clay says, no, you're a homosexual.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, if you must use the clinical term. Yeah.
And Clay says, you haven't thought about me in that way, have you? And he says, no, you're not my type. And then they laugh. And now, like, the tension has kind of broke, and so he does go and sit for a drawing,
Right.
They continue this. But there's still more tension here because, once again, it's another therapy session where all these intense memories are coming back out.
And we've seen the sequence where we saw the making of Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So we have it already in our heads what life was like for James when he was, at his best. Clay starts to ask him about his career. Clay asks him, do you ever miss it? And he says, oh, no, it's been 20 years, who cares? And then he stops and he says, making motion pictures is the most wonderful thing in the world. Working with friends and entertaining people. Yes, I suppose I do miss it.
Yeah.
And, like, it's really sad.
He says it literally, like, 2 seconds after he says he doesn't miss it.
Yes.
It's
kind of like the dripping thing, too, where he was like, he forcefully said one thing, and then he came back, like, just, like you said, 2 seconds later and was like, no, this is actually
and
how
he's being
it is.
honest.
Yes.
Which is great because he's been kind of deceitful with every interaction he's had with Clay. And,
yes.
And even with, like, Mr. K, and I'm sure countless other people before this, he's hiding himself from everyone.
He always feels like the need to impress.
Yeah.
Because even remember when Mr. K first came over, when Hannah was bringing him in, James staged a dignified book.
Yeah. He sits down on the couch real quick and grabs this book like he's reading.
Yes.
And he's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were here."
Oh man,
of course. What a phony.
Exactly. It's really fucked up.
You ever done that? You're like, don't know what to do. People are coming over. You're like, what do I do? You're kind of like standing. No,
right.
Should I just go sit? No, I don't know what to do. And it's like, look in the fridge.
and it's messed up and awkward, but like it's honest.
Yeah.
Like if I came over to your house and you were sitting there like in a smoking jacket with a pipe, like pretending to read War and Peace or something like that, I'm like, something's up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that would be wrong.
Right.
But yeah, and then he starts talking about how this house used to be filled with people and parties and stuff, and he was surrounded by friends and love. And it's showing outside of this little like hut that he's in, where
pool house.
It's pool house. That's his studio,
right,
where he draws. Is the pool, and you see a flashback of all these guys out there eventually. And it's like showing what it was like. It used to be like. And you just see so many dudes out there.
Right.
And Brendan Fraser is like, he's still sitting there. He's not seeing it because it's kind of a memory.
Right.
But he's getting uncomfortable hearing about all these dudes and stuff. And then they kind of yell at each other. And James Whale really pushes hard on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make this guy angry on purpose because I know he's uncomfortable with me telling him about some of this in-depth detail. I'm just going to make it worse. So he starts telling him how there were all these buttocks and all these pricks around, hard pricks. And Boone gets so mad and he walks out. He's like, you don't have to rub my face in it. And he leaves and he goes and he picks up a chick at the bar and he bangs her.
Yeah.
Like he's Ennis Del Mar trying not to be gay.
No, he completely overcompensates. I mean, like, it's just, and I mean, he's there to see Betty, but like, yeah, he's just there to like work out whatever was just in his, and I mean, like, look, if someone told me those kinds of stories, I'd probably, I would sit there and listen, because I'm a sophisticated, I guess, man in 2023. Adult. Exactly. Yes. I understand that, like, in 1957, it was a little different.
Yes.
But like, it's also just an old guy reminiscing about his life. And I mean, there is never a reason to, like, storm out and say, and say homophobic things.
Yeah.
And, like, no matter what year it is.
Right.
Just act like an adult,
Right. But we find out Clay Boone isn't really an adult.
Well, he's not.
He's a big kid, is what he's told by Betty.
Yeah, Betty tells him he's a big, fun kid.
You're not marriage material.
Oh, man, that's rough. You're not marriage material, she tells him, which is just like, I mean, it cuts pretty deep, but like, she's right.
She's totally right.
Yeah.
And then he gets mad at her. He's like, oh, so we're not going to have sex then. She's like, really? That's all you got out of our conversation?
Right.
I'm glad that we're done.
Exactly. She storms away, and then she's like, and he's like, oh, Betty, come on. And he's like chasing her down the street. Yeah. It's like, oh, you're so pathetic.
Freaking idiot.
Exactly.
He is. He's a big man child.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And I mean, like, he had told Mr. K during his James had told Mr. K during their interview about, like, the kind of parties that George Cukor was having too. Yeah. Armies of trade, he said, would be all over the place. and like to when James looks out the window and you just see, like, after Clay storms out and the one dude comes up to the door and goes, hey Jimmy, hey, watch me dive. And like James Whale's face just lights up, and he's looking out there, and like you said, all those naked dudes, it's 1934 again, and it's a nighttime swim party.
He's reliving this memory.
And I mean, like, obviously he had a pretty good time of it, I mean, whatever he wanted, every sexual desire fulfilled.
That was a real bacchanal right
exactly,
there, dude.
Exactly. I'd probably reminisce like that too.
Oh, yeah.
If I had even one night of my life that was like that.
It's the old Hollywood Babylon tales you hear,
Absolutely.
It's
just right.
Just debauchery.
Yep.
Left to right.
Yep. Exactly what you always thought they were getting up to. They just filmed it in this movie and showed it was right.
I love it too. He's like, watch me dive. It's such like a little kid thing to say.
Exactly. This big muscle man.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah. But the next day, they get together again.
Yeah.
Because I guess they like the relationship they have, even though it's gotten kind of tense.
Right. Clay comes back kind of hat in hand and just says, look, I want to sit for you again. Just ease up on the locker room talk, he says. And then, James asks him, okay, so really, why are you here? He goes, well, I don't know. I guess I like your stories. And I think he's telling the truth.
I think so, too.
Yeah, he wants to hear more about Hollywood history and also, everything else that he's been through.
He's lost and lonely, too, just like James Whale.
Of course.
So they have something here that's reciprocal.
Yes.
They're fulfilling needs that each other are missing.
That's absolutely right. They both need what the other one gives them.
Yep.
And this is when Jimmy really starts to go down to a dark place. Because you find out that he's a World War I veteran.
Yeah.
And he had a terrible time of it, just like everybody else there did.
Yep.
So he grows up in extreme poverty, and his reward for this is to be drafted and sent to,
the trenches,
exactly.
Man. Yeah. And while he's there, he meets another man. Then they fall in love.
Barnard.
And he tells Clay that this was the love of his life.
Right.
He never even told David about this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, why am I telling you? I never even told David about this.
Yeah, exactly. Like, right.
Yeah.
It's major.
It's a huge breakthrough.
Yes.
On this therapy couch they got here.
Exactly. This accidental therapy session.
Yeah, and we find out that he died in the trench, and he flies into a barbed wire fence, and he's hanging there dead for the rest of the war. And they have to see him every day, and they start joking around about his body, like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?"
Yes, they say good morning to him.
Yeah,
right.
Oh, and imagine the trauma that James Whale went through from that.
And he has to like kind of he doesn't want any other guys in the outfit, of course, to know about their relationship. So he has to kind of play along and kind of joke about, oh yeah, they're there's Private Barnard again.
Yeah. They salute him and stuff.
Yes.
Like as a joke.
And inside he's just dying, because not only is he taking the death of a comrade badly, but it's a man he actually loved.
Yeah.
And he has to stare at this guy's dead body for the rest of the war.
Ugh. My gosh.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine that. That is the worst punishment.
Tragic. Yes.
No wonder he wants to die.
Absolutely. Yes. He has his past. He just can't outrun it.
Yeah.
It's always there. And that's part of everybody's life. But when you have something traumatic happen to you and you just can't shake it, and it happened to you like every day of your life for like the first 20 years of life. I mean,
yeah.
I can't imagine what it's like.
Yeah. And James Whale gets really kind of upset with all this stuff he's talking about. And he tells Clay, like, hey, I don't want you to sit for me anymore. Like, this is done. We're done. Because he can't take this. Like, the therapy that's happening, it's very challenging, and he hasn't talked about this guy in probably 50 years.
I know. Since the war. I mean, it's been 40 years since the war ended. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ian McKellen gets up in Brendan Fraser's face.
Yes.
And is physically intimidating him.
Mm-hmm.
Like this big hulking guy, 6'3", broad shoulders. Brendan Fraser is like kind of like gingerly trying to dodge, Ian McKellen all up in his face.
Yeah. And the camera, like, gets really close to him, and he's, like, leaning into the camera.
Yes.
Like, and we're kind of over Brendan Fraser's shoulder a little bit.
Right.
And he's really in your face.
It's
whatever he's doing with his facial expressions
right.
and his, like, fists and stuff, like,
yes.
It's really off-putting.
Right. and because he had just been told also that he'd been an officer in the trenches, it's like, on top of this, I mean, like, so he's this close to me, and he's being in a very threatening manner, and he's actually seen some stuff, so I might actually be in danger here.
Yeah, definitely. And they both kind of like yell at each other, like,
yes.
why are you? They yell at each other. What do you want?
Right.
That's what Ian McKellen says at first. Like, what do you want? Why are you here?
Yeah, what do you want? Why are you here?
And then Brendan Fraser's like, well, fuck you. Like, what do you want?
Yes.
Why do you want me here?
And it's totally fair when he comes back at him. Yeah, like, what do you want?
It is. And I thought it was a great exchange.
Right.
And they don't really go into what they want because we know what they want.
Yes.
We can see it from what's on the screen. You
right.
know? They are helping each other grow and work through their own issues.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great scene. It's one of my favorites in the movie, actually.
I think it probably is I think it might be my favorite scene in the movie is that one. Because I think that they're both really, like, the talent of both actors is really on display here. And it's also, I just think, the richest part of James Whale's characterization. I mean, everything he's been through, we now know exactly what he's about.
Yeah. And I do like how it's another scene that escalates into a confrontation. But the last one ended with, like, a storm out.
Yes.
This, they resolve it.
Yeah.
And then they even decide, like, hey, I'll go to that party with you.
Right. Right. Which is just like, man, it's a garden party at George Cukor's house, in which the Princess Margaret is there to, like, I guess, honor everyone in Hollywood who originated in the UK.
Okay, I didn't know what this party was for.
Okay,
I was just like, did he get married to the princess?
No,
I have no clue what's going on
here. It's just like Princess Margaret was like, well, okay, so in the royal family, like, everyone has jobs. You just have to go and do tours.
You're assigned to do this and that. Yep.
Right. Well, this was her assignment. Like, that week, she had to be in California.
She's the Princess of Pasadena.
Exactly. Yeah, there it is. That's right. Yep. My wife and I watched The Crown on Netflix.
Uh-huh.
So, like, this character of Princess Margaret is played by Vanessa Kirby in that show.
Oh, really? Okay.
At least in the 50s. When it gets in the 70s, it's now Helena Bonham Carter.
Okay.
So yeah, really cool stuff.
I love when they're meeting the princess and George Cukor's there.
Yes.
And Ian McKellen introduces Brendan Fraser, and he's like, well, he's never met a princess before, only queens. Yet again, making an underhanded, like, gay joke.
Right.
Just to make everyone uncomfortable.
And he's doing
It's so
like,
funny, dude.
He's fucking with George Cukor.
Oh, yeah.
You
he
know?
totally is.
And it's great because, like, he knows the princess doesn't get the joke.
Yeah, right.
But, like, you know, he wants to, like, make sure that, like, George Cukor knows, hey, I know what you were getting up to, and don't act like, you know, you're standing here, like, pretending to be something you're not.
I think it's the funniest moment in the movie. I fucking loved it.
Yes.
It was great because also he's like sticking it to him a little bit because he's
course.
already said how he hates these people.
Yep.
So he's here just being himself and trying to ruin their day a little bit, you know, like, which is kind of how he's been with every other character in the movie. Like, it's just how he is.
Right. And now at this party, that's all he wants to do. You know?
because this party is important.
Sure.
Apparently.
And he knows, like, from being a poor person that, like, the idea that he's at a fancy party like this is totally foreign to him, or at least it would have been when he was a kid.
Yeah.
But now that so now I'm a great artist and I've got money, so that means you'll have me now, you know?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Now I'm a person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it really is. And did you happen to notice who played George Cukor?
No, who was it?
The actor's name is Martin Ferrero. You might remember him from a little picture called Jurassic Park.
Okay.
He's the lawyer who gets devoured off the toilet by the T-Rex.
That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So I guess he didn't die.
That's true.
That's cool.
Uh-huh.
So they're at the party, right? Kind of just schmoozing around a little bit, like you have to. And he sees David, who has been in New York working with Liz Taylor, apparently.
Yep.
She's at the party.
Right.
And it's a funny scene because Ian McKellen is looking at David and Brendan Fraser's looking at Liz Taylor.
Right.
Like they're both like drooling.
Of course. Of course. That really makes sense.
It's really funny.
And, you know, like, James thinks that David got him the invitation to this party.
Yeah.
He just that's the logical assumption.
Right.
You know? And David tells him he did not. And David saw the exchange with George Cukor that we found so funny.
Yeah.
And, like, he's also watched James, you know, probably hobnob, like going around to other people at the
causing
party.
trouble with
exactly,
everyone.
and making mischief.
Yeah.
And he's pissed off at James for doing this because he says that, you know, like James tells him, look, I have total freedom. I don't care. I'm set. I got my money. And David's like, well, some of us don't, and we have to work here. So, you know, watch yourself. And
it's a smart line, I think.
it is. And I mean, like, because he's obviously David doesn't want anyone to know, like, who he really is.
Yeah. Right.
He's also, it's 1957. He's probably afraid of being blacklisted, you know, because I mean, people were taken out for
because he's prominent in the industry still.
Absolutely,
He's making hits after hit.
Exactly.
James Whale's, for lack of a better term, washed up.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. He's not part of the industry anymore.
Right. So who gives a crap?
Right. So yeah, David has a right to, like, you know, kind of tell James to cool it a little bit, you know.
Right.
And I mean, like, if James Whale just did this and it was just like this wealthy guy going about the party, you know, making people uncomfortable, that'd be one thing. But, like, they know that he's associated with David, so David is gonna, like, catch some flack for this.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's gonna be some kind of rumors going around.
Yes.
And you at that time you'll get on the blacklist.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So James Whale is there, and he hears someone calling out to him, and this person runs up to him, and it's Mr. K from the beginning of the movie.
Yep.
He's there, and apparently he was the guy who got him on the guest list.
Man.
Because he loves his monsters. And he sees him there, and Elsa's there, Boris is there, and they get them all together for a photo op.
Right.
And this is just like Mr. K's wet dream right here. Like,
Absolutely.
This is what he wants.
Yes, this is all he cares about.
And everyone's there, and they're like, yeah, okay, we're together. You know, and no one seems to really care.
Well, Elsa Lanchester is a little bit like, you know, like when they pose for the picture, she, like, out of the side of her mouth goes, don't you just love being famous?
Yeah.
You know?
But I don't think she meant that, right? Was she being sarcastic?
Oh, I think she's being sarcastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I
read.
So
that's how you, okay, I'm sorry.
Like, she was fed up with the whole thing, too.
Okay,
She's like, I'm fucking tired of this. just like James is.
I misunderstood when you said
And-
that they didn't care. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like that's what I meant. Like they didn't care for this situation.
Yeah.
Boris Karloff is just spaced out.
Man,
at
that
this
guy,
point.
yeah, he's like making kissy faces at his grandniece or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, yeah.
So they're all getting pictures, and the camera flash is reminding James, excuse me, of like the muzzle flashes from the
Right.
war, and it's triggering him.
Right.
And it's bringing on another episode, kind of.
And at that time, nobody knew anything about post-traumatic stress of any kind. I mean, like, everybody
No.
was just walking around and dealing with it, and no one was, able to get any therapy for it.
Yep.
So he's, like, had a stroke and is dealing with that, and he's being insulted professionally, and he's just alienated all of his former colleagues, and,
Yep.
it's a bad time.
Yep. And it starts to rain. Like an old monster movie,
Yep.
pretty much.
Yep.
Like the thunder cracks,
I know, right.
and then it pours down. Later in the movie, when some rain starts, you can actually see it like coming from a sprinkler
Dude,
almost. Like
oh
the
my
angle, I'm like, that's a sprinkler. You
I have
can
it.
tell.
I have it in my notes. I mean, like,
Yeah.
like that one, movie magic calling attention to itself.
Yeah.
Like, that rain machine activates, and the way that shot is framed, I think it is intentional.
Okay.
Like, you have Clay on the left.
I
and
think
then
so, too.
The whole right side of the screen is the night sky lit by a street lamp. And then when the rain blows in, you can really tell it's not falling from the sky.
No, it's an angle.
It is. It's like deliberately artificial.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I mean, that symbolizes a lot of what this movie's trying to say.
Exactly.
know.
Wow. Yeah. Really does.
Yes.
I didn't think of it that far, but
Right.
yeah, that it's just like the flashback scenes, or when they're recreating the scenes when they're the monster or the scientist.
Yes.
Like it's just like that, just slightly different.
Right. Because, like, even the World War I sequences, I mean, like, when you see Jimmy's flashbacks, it's like, I look at them and I think that why aren't they grittier,
Yeah,
there's
they look
like-
like All Quiet on the Western Front.
Exactly. It's bloodless, and it looks like kind of like a theatrical production,
Yeah.
which I guess maybe that is the intention, because that's the way he remembers it. In his mind, I mean, he's a creative person, and like in his head, like the trauma and the dirt and mud of it is like, because he was in love with Barnard, he's somehow made it palatable for himself that
Yeah.
way. So we're seeing into his mind rather than actually what was going on.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah.
So everyone flees the party with the storm, and Clay and Jimmy are standing under an umbrella, and James Whale is like grabbing his head, and he says like the monsters are in here.
Yes.
For some reason he says that, like pointing into his own mind.
Right.
And I mean, they are. Like
Yes,
they're
of
living
course.
in your memory. Not like Frankenstein, but your friend dead in the war.
Yes.
Like everything that's happened to you.
All the
your
tragedy in his
upbringing.
life,
It's just
yeah.
those are the monsters.
Yes.
So they go back to the house, right? And they're soaking wet. Jimmy's going to change his clothes. Or, Jimmy changes clothes, but then Clay has to change clothes.
Right.
But Jimmy doesn't have any clothes for him. He's just in a towel.
He's able to produce. This is when we find out about his tailored pajamas.
Yes,
because
right.
like Clay said, well, do you have any like baggy shorts or pajama bottoms? Like, oh, I'm afraid all my pajamas are tailored. It's like, oh Jesus. Well, okay, fine.
Come on, old man.
Exactly.
Come on.
But he finally finds this like this big sweater. He goes, well, this absolutely
is
swims
swimming on me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he throws it to him. He puts it on, and then he asks Clay if he'd be okay with like until his clothes are dry. Could he just wear that towel? It's hardly more modest than a kilt, he says, which I guess is true, but it's also just like you're gonna try and upskirt this guy. Obviously.
Right. It's just a bath towel wrapped around him.
Yes.
And on Brendan Fraser, there's not much slack around that.
I know. I'm sure
his waist is a trunk.
because James Whale's towels are probably also tailored.
He's got a little hand towel to cover him up.
Yes,
He's so
exactly.
skinny.
No, he's a little. I mean, like Brendan Fraser is a big dude,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like really obvious in this scene too, because like they're standing there, and whenever they put the two actors together, you can really tell the size difference,
Yeah.
and like and that's important because obviously the scene that we alluded to earlier, where James is actually able to physically intimidate this
Yeah.
guy. I mean, you can really see it here too.
Yeah, and like at the end of this scene, he puts James Whale to bed, like,
Yeah.
and helps him take his shirt off because he's not even capable of that.
Oh
at the
yeah,
moment.
in the end of the movie,
And he
yeah.
takes the shirt off, and you just see how skinny and frail
know,
he is.
right.
Like, it just amplifies their difference.
Yes. Yes.
And it's kind of sad, actually, like, just to see I guess he's always been skinny, but it just seems like that's sad. He looks like he's going to die.
I know. He looks gaunt.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it's like it's Ian McKellen's real physique at the time, and
Yeah.
I'm like obviously he's in good shape, but it's like
Right.
his chest is sunken in,
Yeah.
and he's a frail old man. That's what he looks like in this movie.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. But before that,
Right.
Brendan Fraser is walking around in his quote unquote kilt.
Yes. Right.
And they go into the study and they're hanging out and they're kind of a little drunk, right?
Yeah, because they had dinner together. Like
they had beers at the party and everything.
yeah.
And
then they decided to have some that's right. Because they both had a lot to drink.
they did, yeah.
Yes.
James Whale is just taking these martinis.
Yes.
Like as a waiter walks by with a tray, just getting these martinis.
He goes, "Oh, I say," and he grabs another one. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he asks Clay, like, do you believe in mercy killing? Just out of nowhere, kind of.
Yep.
Which is a little weird. And then we find out the truth of what Clay had said earlier in the movie about Korea when he shrugged. He never went to Korea.
Yep.
He joined the Marines because his father had joined the Marines for World War II, and before he got deployed, the war ended. And it actually was very devastating to him because it was who he wanted to be. He wanted to go to the war.
Right.
He wanted to help and be a hero, but he never even had a chance. So his dad is carrying that around with him and basically kind of forced it on his son.
Yep.
So Clay enlisted in the Marines and was in basic training, and his appendix exploded and he got discharged.
Right.
And his dad just laughed at him for it, which is an awful response
Yes, of course.
to have to your son or anybody.
Right.
So Boone has opened up. Clay Boone has now opened up and revealed his truth
Yep.
about war.
And he says, so no war stories for this guy. And James says, on the contrary, Clay, you've just told me one.
Right.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this guy who, really has been through war, hears this guy's story about, not getting to go to war. And it's like, he's obviously been... If he's been carrying this around, and this is probably the first time he's ever told anybody this story.
Yeah.
Only him and his dad had known about it before.
Yeah.
It's obviously this is really unburdening yourself here.
Right. It's just as traumatic
Yeah.
as going into the trench.
Exactly.
I mean, it has affected your whole life.
Because he's probably been pretending all this time. He's got early in the movie, when in the first scene when we see him in his Airstream trailer, did you notice that the USMC Zippo lighter that he had next to his bed? He's got the Lucky Strikes or Camel non-filters, and then a gold Zippo with the Marine logo on it. It's like he's still walking around with this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not. He was in the Marines. He went to boot camp,
Right.
but he never went to war. But he's kind of he wants people to think that he was.
Yeah.
And because it was important to him as it was important to his dad, and
Right.
he doesn't want that. That it's not about a secret that he's holding. It's that he just wants everyone to think that he was man enough to have been a veteran.
Right, exactly. Which is stupid if you ask me. Just be honest about it.
Yeah.
People would solve a lot of their issues if they just were honest.
I mean,
And again, it can be hard to be honest.
yes, it can.
It can be very hard.
Especially, masculinity is the loss of it and the protection of it is something we've all, made ourselves victim to. I mean, I've done things to make myself appear more manly in people's eyes.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and it was always stupid.
Yep.
And I'm not saying I'm still not totally innocent of it. I'm sure I still do stuff like that to appear, like I said, like someone that guy's a real man, it's like,
Yeah. And I think back then in the 50s too.
oh man. Yeah.
Right after World War II ended, and all these fathers have these tales of valor that their kids want to live up to, and they can't.
I mean, World War I and World War II had happened, and yeah, we are in 1957. It is duck and cover
Right.
Dwight Eisenhower's America.
Right, and it's your grandfather's telling you stories
Yes.
of the Great War, and your dad's telling you stories about World War II.
Yep.
And then what do you got?
Right.
I've got to get something.
Yep.
Just having to live up to the generational expectations, and proving you're a man by doing that.
It's like the idea that you would ever like put that on your child too, that like they have to live up to your ideal of what a man should be. I mean, it's like, what are you trying to get out of this?
Yeah.
And you know, obviously it goes even beyond that. I mean, all these people who are like, you know, I need to have sons so that I can continue my kingdom.
Right.
I
yeah.
mean, fuck off. You know? Yeah.
Yeah. So they're having this really intimate conversation about the wars and
Yep.
stuff. And it's revealed, James Whale shows them like, all right, I'm going to show you what I've been drawing. And it's just scribbles because his mental faculties aren't even allowing him to draw.
He can't draw anymore.
So he hasn't even been drawing. It's just been these therapy sessions.
He shows him just like page after page of this sketch pad with like just scribbles on it, and it doesn't even look like anything. It's nothing. It's just a bunch of, you know, lines.
Yeah.
And in order to help him out, Clay decides to disrobe for him, takes off his clothes and says, you know, this is the way you wanted to paint me. You know,
You wanted to draw me like a statue.
exactly. So here we go.
I love how he does this.
Yeah.
It shows how comfortable he feels with them, how safe he feels with them, and how much he wants to help him.
Yes.
Like, he's doing this for him.
Yes.
You know? And he's okay with it.
He's like almost, it's the first time he's really deciding to embrace this guy as a true friend.
Yeah.
You know, and this friend who's going through a rough time. I mean, obviously, when he to be shown, if I was Clay in that moment, and they showed me those sketches. Oh my God, this guy, he physically can't do it. I mean, I don't know, like, I don't know what I would do, but I guess I would try to come up with a way of trying to help him, and this is the only way he can think of.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So James Whale gets excited about it. You know, he can draw him naked, and, you know, which is what he's kind of wanted to do the whole time.
Yeah.
You know,
of course.
But things start to take a little different turn here, though.
Yeah.
James Whale says, wait, and he goes and grabs this World War I gas mask that we saw earlier in the movie. That was his. And he makes him wear the gas mask, which, honestly, it's pretty a cool image.
It's really
a big, naked,
yeah.
sexy guy with this gas mask on. It's kind of cool looking.
It's an arresting visual for sure.
Yes, it definitely is. But then he starts, like, touching him and, like, kissing on him, too.
Starts
And the mask
fondling
is
him.
suffocating him a little bit.
Yep.
He's being inappropriate now. Now he's crossing the line.
Right.
And Clay keeps telling him, stop. Hey, I don't want you to do this. You need to stop. And eventually, he has to, like, throw him on the ground because he won't stop.
Right.
And he gets on top of him, and James Whale is taunting him, telling him to choke him and kill him.
Yep.
Which is what he was kind of getting at with the mercy killing line from earlier in the scene.
Right.
He wants to die. Kill me.
And the way he figures out a way to make Clay kill him is to, you know, like,
Yeah.
do this. Like, because he says stuff when he said about the taunting. He's like, you know, hey, you know, what are your friends going to say? You know, I kissed you on your neck. I touched your prick.
Yeah.
You know, how are you going to reconcile that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And he's on top of him, and he is kind of choking him a little bit.
Right.
And he yells at him, I am not your monster, and then lets go.
Yes.
Like, and that's the end of that scene. But then he tucks him into bed, right? I guess they calm down a little, right?
Yeah, because like you know, because James does get up and asks for forgiveness while Clay is like still like reeling from the encounter.
Yeah.
And like James, this is like the third time in the movie that like James has like had to apologize profusely for his actions to Clay. You know, but this is obviously the most inappropriate that he's ever been. I mean, just telling him stories was maybe a little out of line, but this is like, he was like going beyond that.
Right. And I think his intentions with this were different from before too.
Yes.
Because like you said, he wants him to kill him in this scene. That's his motivation the entire time.
Right.
Before, he was just trying to, get his rocks off a little bit.
Yes, of course. Right. But before he knew who Clay was, and like he actually developed a bond and a friendship with him.
Right. So it's a little different in this scene. And again, it's another tragic moment in his life. Like, it's so sad to hear that he just wants things to end so much. And he's trying to get his new friend, who's been probably the best friend he's had in a long time.
Yeah, of course.
To kill him.
I mean, I know why he wants to die. And when he asks about believing in mercy killing, I mean, if he was asking me that question, I would say yes.
Yeah.
I mean, because I do believe in mercy killing, and I think
I wouldn't choke him to death on the floor.
Absolutely not. That is out of the question.
Right.
What my proposal would be is something akin to like what Dr. Kevorkian was trying to do.
Yes.
I think that it should be in a medical setting, and I think that people should be allowed to, have that, to make that decision. Because there are people who are living in tremendous pain sometimes, or in the case of James Whale, he knows that like his condition will just worsen every day until he's dead.
Yeah.
So if he can't enjoy life anymore, then what is the point of living?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Like, there should be something like that allowed.
Yes.
I don't think it should be as easy as possible to do.
Oh,
just because someone's having a bad day. Well, that's okay.
Well, that's it for me. Right.
Yep. Yeah. Well, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, no, I agree. There should be a rigorous screening process.
Yes, exactly. Right.
You have to talk to a therapist before.
I stepped in a puddle on my way to work. God damn it.
God damn it.
That's it. We're going to take a right here today.
Exactly.
No, but then after they calm down like that, like, he puts him to bed.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah, tucks him in like a little kid.
Like, they've gone through this horrible event minutes earlier, and Clay still has it in him to take care of him.
Yeah.
And be nice.
And he still hasn't been given dry clothes.
No, he's still in that towel.
Yes. And he's now got like a sheet over his head, like Mary Magdalene. And
I wonder if there's symbolism in that.
There's got to be something. Yeah, exactly. But like he's walking around, and then, Hannah had to step out. The reason she wasn't in the house is because like she had been called away to like do something with her family.
Yeah.
Some kind of emergency thing.
Yeah, her daughter needed something.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next morning, she is like getting the house ready, and she sees Clay asleep in a chair, and there's a note next to him. Earlier, before they left Jimmy's bedroom, he had like pointed out there was this thing on his this picture on his nightstand.
Yeah.
That was a sketch of like Boris Karloff as the monster.
Yeah.
And Clay looks at it and he sees that it's the picture from the frame, and he turns it over and he says, it's personalized to Clay. And Hannah goes looking for Jimmy. She says, "I must wake the master."
Yeah.
She's pretending like she's Igor, I guess.
Yeah, I put him to bed last night,
yes,
he says.
Yes.
She goes up to wake him up.
Right.
And he's not there.
He's not there.
So where could he be?
Well, Clay looks outside and, takes off sprinting toward the pool. And Jimmy is in the pool in his finest suit.
Yep. Face down.
Yep.
He's probably been there all night.
Right.
Yeah, and he dives in to get his body, pulls him out, gets him onto the side of the pool there, and I mean he's totally dead.
Right.
He's been there forever.
Right.
Hannah runs down and won't let him try to resuscitate him. For some reason.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is about. And I also don't know why Hannah, throws him back in the pool.
Well, she says she doesn't want anyone to know that Clay was there.
Okay,
I guess because I don't know, because earlier in the movie she said she's upset because he's a homosexual, he's going to go to hell, right?
Yes, of course.
I think maybe she's trying to help that somehow because she's saying something about this during this scene. I don't know.
No, you're right. That is those her motivation.
Maybe she's trying to help his soul somehow. I have no idea.
And she also doesn't want like there to be any kind of scandal, like because they would ask you like why was Clay there?
Yeah, there'd be a scandal.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. So they have to throw his body back in the pool,
right?
Which is just a gut punch.
I know exactly because I mean
Yeah, and right before the morning, there was a final dream that James Whale had while he was sleeping, and it was where you said kind of earlier where they're at the trench in World War I, but it's in silhouette. It's Ian McKellen and Brendan Fraser walking just in this barren landscape with a single tree,
right?
And it looks like Frankenstein's monster walking, and I guess it's Dr. Frankenstein. I mean, who is it? The girl? Who is Ian McKellen supposed to be in that scene? Or is it just supposed to be?
I think it is just him.
Symbolic of. Maybe it is him. It is James Whale with the monster.
Right, because the monster is in some ways his creation in addition to Dr. Frankenstein.
Right, he's the god.
Right. Yes.
So, but yeah, then there's flashes of the gunfire, which is kind of like lightning bolts,
Right.
And you see it's actually the actors.
Right.
But then it flashes back to the silhouette. And it's in this slow-mo in like a sepia tone. And then we see down in the trench, there's, what's his name? Barnard?
Barnard, yeah.
Yeah. He's down there laying dead in the trench with everyone else. And then James Whale goes down into the trench and just lays next to him.
Takes his place
right.
Next to him.
We find out, in the next scene, he killed himself.
Yeah.
And that must be the moment.
Yeah.
Right there when he lays down with his true love.
Yes.
So
that's kind of lovely, actually.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Right.
So right after the scene with the pool, it kind of just cuts.
Right.
To what, 10 years later?
Yeah, something like that. I think it's now like probably, I'm going to say it's 1971 now, so probably 15 years later.
Yeah, so it doesn't even say anything. We don't get anything. It's just throw him back in the pool and then boom, 15 years later.
Yes.
Doesn't even say. We're watching Bride of Frankenstein on the TV again.
Yeah.
And what it is Clay has grown older now, and there's a boy watching the TV with him, his son.
Yes.
About 10 years old,
right?
Something like that. And so they're watching this movie together, and Clay is like reciting the lines to himself and stuff because he has such a special relationship with James Whale. Like even from the get-go, he was so happy to watch Bride of Frankenstein now that he had met this guy,
right.
And now he's watching it with his son, and he even asked him, like, what'd you think of the movie? And he said it was good, So, and he shows him the picture, the drawing, the sketch of the Frankenstein monster. Mm-hmm. It says, like, I knew that guy.
Right.
He gave me this. Like, he was my friend.
Right.
Which he was like, oh, cool, Dad.
It's a really nice moment.
Yeah. And then he has to take the trash out. His wife tells him to. I guess. I don't know. I don't know if she says that or not.
No, she does. She's like, she tells him, like, but before the, the garbage man comes.
Before it rains.
Yeah, before it rains. That's right.
Yeah. So he goes out there, and then this is where we get the shot of the rain coming in from the wrong angle.
Yes. Exactly. It's like the most obvious rain machine I've ever seen. And then Brendan Fraser does a cool move. He starts lumbering down the street like Frankenstein's monster in the rain.
Yeah.
Like the pantomime, like Boris Karloff stuff with his arms in the air,
but then he goes back to kind of just like skipping around the puddle, and then back to Frankenstein mode.
Right.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
I didn't like it that much. Actually,
you really you didn't like it?
I didn't really like it.
Okay, tell me about it.
I don't know why. I just was like,
too much.
I don't. Maybe I don't know, but something about it. I was like, I guess. He's in the middle of the street by himself pretending he's Frankenstein, which I just felt was maybe it was too much, but I don't know.
It's a strange thing to do.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
But I've done shit like that before.
I'll
just stop in the middle of the hallway and like do a karate kick or something.
Dude, you're talking about my life's work.
Yeah, like So yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. It's not as bad as I'm making it sound.
Good. Right, yeah.
Like it's not bad, but I think I was kind of like unexpecting that. You know?
Of course. Right.
I figured, okay, he'd be in the rain and he'd like look up or I don't know.
Yeah.
But for the Frankenstein walk.
Right.
So, but no, that's the end of the movie. The camera like kind of cranes up and out as he walks through the alley in the rain.
And we have that cool thing like that credit card thing that comes up, a good cast is worth repeating.
Yeah.
Just like, Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah. It's the same title card, just with, the actors from this movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Good stuff.
Anything else, Dave?
There was there was one short scene earlier in the movie where Hannah puts James to bed. And she brings him his pills.
Yeah,
and
yes.
He's got his jar of pills there, and he opens it up and pours them all into his hand. And then we cut, and he is like in the bed, like with his tongue lolling out, and she comes running in, and she goes, "Oh my!" And there's like, like terrifying music on the soundtrack, and she's trying to revive him, and she's crossing herself. And then we cut back to James in the bed with the pills in his hand, and he just starts laughing.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's cool, I think, to know that like James Whale in that time and place, he would have put that joke in one of his movies if he could have.
Yeah.
Because it says everything about who he is and how he thinks.
Yep. I really loved that part.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked. I was like, what? Really?
Yeah, exactly,
oh, no.
Right.
And then he laughs about it and puts the pills back in the bottle.
I know.
It's such a great character choice.
That laugh of just like, he's just like, he's...
That morbid humor.
I know. Yeah. He loves it. He put as much as he could into his movies that they would allow him.
Yeah.
But like... And also, too, I think that like part of the thing that we missed about like the thing with Clay and James when they were talking, one of the aspects of his career that he talked about was what happened after he had made Showboat. He wanted to make his now most personal film, which was called The Road Back. It was about Germany after World War I.
Yep.
And he was really excited about it, and he says it was going to be his masterpiece, and the studio took it away from him,
Yeah.
and they didn't like it.
They changed stuff.
Yes.
And ruined it.
Yep. They added slapstick, and it was totally unsuccessful, and it's what soured him on filmmaking entirely.
Right, and he took the hit. They blamed him.
Yes, for it being a bomb.
Yeah, it was his fault.
Yes. And the only last thing is not really about the movie, but like just about James Whale's paintings. Some of them are in the movie, and some of them you can just like Google them. One of them was there's a painting of his studio that they used to create the studio. The pool set.
Oh, that's
pool
really
house.
cool.
Yeah, they just like did it. They're like, because he put so much detail into this painting, they were able to like use it to create the set. And the other one is like a cool painting of like a premiere night at Mann's Chinese Theater. It's in the theater, and it's just such great perspective, and like you see the blue light coming off the screen and everything. Man, he was a real artist with a great eye. And yeah, it's really cool if you can just check that stuff out.
Jeez, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, so would you recommend the movie, Dave?
Yes, absolutely. This is a great movie, and it's a very personal film for Bill Condon, and also for Clive Barker. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I'd recommend it too. After talking about it, I think I even have more respect for it. Like I liked it after watching it, but now we've discussed it. Like, yeah, it's great.
It's a deep film.
It's very deep, and it's there's not much to it really. It's just a lot of these therapy sessions.
I know,
and these two characters.
People just talking about things and working it out. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. All right, so that wraps it up. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts. Rate it, review it, and most of all, share it, as we said at the top of the show.
Yes.
It gets more dudes listening to the dudes. And you can also go to dudesonmovies.com/demand and get your requests in.
Right.
And you can also find anything else you need right there.
Yes, and we're on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram. Look for Dudes on Movies, and our email address is dudesonmovies@gmail.com.
That's right. And Dave, we have a question of the week. What's the question of the week?
What are your favorite fictional stories in which real people are characters?
Mm-hmm. And stay tuned next week when we do 1986's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, directed by John Hughes and starring Matthew Broderick. So until next week, I'm your dude Scott.
I'm your dude Dave.
And we'll see you next time.